I overheard my sister plotting against me. My smile as I closed the door said it all. It was late at night, and the house was quiet except for the faint sound of a voice coming from the kitchen. I was on my way to grab a glass of water when I noticed the light still on. At first, I thought Savannah was just scrolling on her phone, maybe snacking like she always did. But as I stepped closer, I realized she was whispering. Her voice had that low, sharp tone she used when she didn't want anyone to hear. I stopped at the doorway, hidden in the shadows. My sister didn't see me. She was leaning against the counter, speaking quickly into her phone. At first I couldn't make out the words, but then I heard my name. I froze, my hand still on the frame of the door. "Don't worry," she said softly. "She won't suspect a thing. Garrett will come around. Once she's out of the way, everything will fall into place." My stomach twisted. Garrett. My fiancé. The man I was supposed to marry in a few months. She was talking about him, about me. My sister, the same one I had defended countless times, was planning something against me. It was like someone had poured ice water down my back, but I kept still. I should have stormed in, demanded to know what she meant. I should have called her out right there. But something stopped me. Instead, I stayed quiet. I listened to her laugh, the smug kind of laugh that told me she thought she was clever, untouchable. I had always known Savannah could be selfish, but I never imagined she would go this far. I pressed my lips together, forcing myself to stay calm even as my heart pounded. The betrayal was already clear enough. She was planning to ruin everything I had worked so hard for. She lowered her voice again, saying things I couldn't quite catch. But I didn't need to hear the rest. I understood enough. She was after the one thing she thought could make her feel superior to me. She was after Garrett. Slowly, I stepped back, careful not to let the floor creak beneath me. The last thing I wanted was for her to know I had been there. If she suspected, she would change her moves, hide her plans. No, I wanted her to think I was still in the dark. When I reached the edge of the door, I looked at her one last time. She was smiling into her phone, certain that no one could see the ugliness behind that smile. That's when I felt my own lips curve. Not out of happiness, but out of something sharper, something colder. I pulled the door shut, slow and quiet, and let that smile stay on my face. She thought she had the upper hand. She thought I was blind. But what she didn't know was that I had already made my choice. Revenge would be better than confrontation. And I was patient enough to wait. Growing up, I was always the one holding things together for my younger sister. Savannah had a way of getting herself into problems, and somehow I was always the one who cleaned up after her. When she couldn't pay rent 1 month, I handed over the money without thinking twice. When she got caught lying at work, I defended her, saying she was just under pressure. Even with our parents, who never tolerated mistakes, I stood up for her more times than I could count. I thought that was what family was supposed to do. Savannah never said thank you in a way that felt real, but I didn't expect it. I told myself she was young, still figuring life out. I had my career, my own place, and a future I was proud of. She was still drifting, moving from one short job to another, living off excuses. I never realized how much resentment that built inside her until it was too late. People sometimes compared us without meaning harm. They'd say I was the responsible one, or the steady one, while Savannah was the wild one. I thought those were just casual words, but to her they were reminders that I was ahead. I had Garrett, a fiancé who adored me, and I had the trust of our family. She had none of that, and jealousy began to grow where love should have been. The night I overheard her, everything made sense. Her late-night whispers, the secretive way she looked at her phone, the smugness in her smile, it was all tied to one thing. She wasn't just bitter, she was plotting. The truth was sharper than I expected. Savannah wanted Garrett. She wanted to ruin my engagement, not only to hurt me but to step into my place. By taking him, she thought she could finally win, finally be the one our parents admired. To her, this wasn't about love. It was about power, about stealing what she thought was rightfully hers. I thought back to all the times I had trusted her, defended her when no one else would. I remembered the nights I stayed up talking her through her mistakes, the mornings I helped her clean up the messes she made. Every memory felt heavier now, poisoned by the truth of what she was planning. It was clear she didn't see me as a sister anymore. I was just an obstacle standing in her way, someone she could cut down if it meant shining brighter. She believed Garrett could be swayed, that she could seduce him and destroy everything I had been building. She wanted my happiness, my stability, and even the approval of our parents, which she never could earn on her own. Knowing all this didn't break me the way she probably hoped it would. It hardened me. The betrayal burned deep, but I refused to let her see me weak. She had made her move, and I understood the game now. What she didn't know was that I was already preparing my own. I acted as if I knew nothing. Around both of them, I kept my face calm, my tone light, and my smile ready. But inside, I was watching every small detail, every tiny shift in their behavior. If Savannah thought I was blind, then she would act more freely. And that was exactly what I needed. It started with little things. Whenever Savannah was near Garrett, she found excuses to touch him. A hand on his arm when she laughed too loudly at something he said, a brush of her shoulder when she passed by him in the hallway, even leaning too close when she showed him something on her phone. Most people might have missed it, but I didn't. Those touches lasted longer than they should have, and I saw the way Garrett stiffened each time. He tried to play it off, but guilt doesn't hide easily. When I looked at him afterward, he struggled to meet my eyes. His answers to my questions came with small pauses, as if he had to think carefully about what to say. Once, when I asked if he and Savannah had been hanging out more, he laughed too quickly and changed the subject. Those little hesitations told me everything. Instead of confronting him, I smiled. I leaned closer, laughed at his jokes, and carried on like nothing was wrong. If Garrett was already feeling guilty, my calmness made it worse for him. I could see it in the way he fidgeted when Savannah was nearby, like he didn't know who he was betraying more, me with his silence or himself with his weakness. Savannah, on the other hand, seemed almost bold. She thought her little acts went unnoticed. Sometimes, when she caught my eye after touching him, she gave me this innocent smile, the kind meant to cover something sly. I matched it with one of my own, brighter and warmer, as though I trusted her completely. That unsettled her more than if I had frowned. I noticed the cracks growing between Garrett's actions and his words. He promised me love, promised me forever, but his body told me another story. He leaned away when Savannah touched him, but not enough to stop her. He avoided conversations about wedding plans, offering excuses about work or being tired. When he kissed me goodnight, I could feel hesitation in his lips, like a shadow of someone else lingered there. Each time I saw these signs, my chest tightened, but I refused to let it show. I would not give either of them the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Instead, I played the role of the perfect fiancé, cheerful and calm, watching as their own actions began to trap them. My smile became my shield. It kept them guessing, kept them uneasy. Garrett avoided my eyes, Savannah overplayed her charm, and I simply observed. Every glance, every guilty hesitation, every careless touch, I stored it all away. The game had begun, and I was patient enough to let them make the next mistake. I knew I couldn't stop them by shouting or crying. That would only make me look weak, and it would warn them that I was onto their game. So I kept my calm smile and began planting little seeds, making them think I was still blind while quietly setting up my own plan. With Savannah, I started sharing things I normally wouldn't. I told her about fake wedding worries, how Garrett sometimes seemed distracted, how I wasn't sure about the color of the bridesmaid dresses. They weren't real concerns, but I wanted to see what she would do with them. Soon enough, I noticed bits of my words coming back to me in twisted ways, as if she couldn't resist using them to her advantage. It was proof she was carrying my secrets straight into the shadows. I also began leaving small traps for Garrett. Once, I mentioned I had a late shift at work, when really I stayed nearby. I wanted to see if Savannah would drop by his place when she thought I was gone. Another time, I left my phone recording in the living room before stepping outside. I didn't always catch something big, but even the smallest slips were useful. Every pause, every whisper, every laugh that sounded too close, I saved them. I kept a folder on my laptop, filling it with recordings, screenshots, and even receipts. If Savannah bought wine on a night I wasn't home, I made a note of it. If Garrett suddenly had charges for dinners he never mentioned, I saved those too. None of it was enough on its own, but together, it was building a picture. A picture I could one day put in front of both of them. The hardest part was pretending not to notice. When Savannah bragged about how much Garrett liked her advice, I acted thankful. When Garrett said he was busy with work, I kissed him on the cheek and told him not to worry. Inside, I was stitching together every lie, every crack in their stories. I wasn't rushing. I wanted them to grow comfortable, to believe they were winning. The more careless they became, the easier it was to gather proof. Every smile I gave them was another step in my plan, another piece of control sliding into my hands. They thought I was the fool in this game, but I was simply waiting. My silence wasn't weakness. It was preparation, and I was getting closer to the moment when everything would unravel. I decided it was time to stop guessing and start seeing the truth with my own eyes. Up until then, I had gathered hints and whispers, but I wanted something clear, something that told me I wasn't imagining it. That evening, I went over to Garrett's apartment like I always did. We had dinner, talked a little, and when I left, I made sure to leave my purse behind on the couch. It wasn't an accident. I already knew I'd be coming back. I waited outside for a while, long enough for him to think I was gone for the night. Then I walked back quietly and unlocked the door. The sound of laughter met me before I even stepped inside. It wasn't Garrett's usual laugh, and it wasn't mine either. It was Savannah's. My stomach turned, but I forced myself to stay calm. I moved carefully, not making a sound, and stopped just out of sight. I could hear them in the living room, voices low, but full of warmth they didn't have around me anymore. They weren't saying anything too bold, but the way they talked told me everything. Savannah was teasing him about something, and Garrett's laugh was softer than I'd ever heard it. It was the kind of laugh people share when they're holding secrets between them. Then came the silence, the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. I didn't need to see them to know how close they were standing. My heart cracked right there, but I held myself still. I refused to let the sound of my breath give me away. After a minute, I walked into the room, smiling as if nothing felt strange. Both of their faces changed instantly. Savannah straightened up too quickly, and Garrett's smile froze on his lips. I acted surprised to see her there. "Oh," I said lightly. "I forgot my purse." My voice was calm, steady, even though inside I felt like glass breaking. Savannah tried to cover, saying she had just stopped by to check on him. Garrett looked pale, almost sick, as if the walls had closed in around him. I bent down, picked up my purse, and turned to him with the sweetest smile I could manage. "Thank you for watching out for Savannah," I told him, my tone kind and almost teasing. The way his eyes flickered told me he understood my words carried more weight than they seemed. I left soon after, purse in hand, my steps steady though my chest ached. Outside, I finally allowed myself to breathe deeply, letting the night air cool the fire inside me. I had heard enough to know what was happening. I didn't need to see their hands touch or their lips meet. The closeness in their voices had been enough. My heart was broken, yes, but not in a way that would destroy me. It only made me colder, sharper. That night was my first true confirmation, and though it hurt, it gave me strength. I knew what I was dealing with now, and I knew exactly how careful I needed to be. Savannah started to change around me after that night. She carried herself with this quiet arrogance, as if she held some secret that made her stronger than me. It was in the way she smiled, the way she dropped little comments, careful but sharp enough to sting. "You're not as perfect as everyone thinks you are," she said one afternoon, laughing like it was a joke, but her eyes told me she meant every word. I didn't bite. Instead, I played along, acting like the sister who trusted her. I even leaned on her at times, pretending I needed her support. I told her about doubts I didn't really have, about arguments with Garrett that never happened, about how I wasn't sure if I was ready for marriage. They were all lies, bait carefully placed for her to carry away. I wanted to see what she would do with them, how quickly she would use them. Savannah ate it up. She listened with wide eyes, nodding like she cared, but I could see the spark of satisfaction in her face. She thought she was winning, thought she was smarter, thought she had me wrapped around her little finger. What she didn't realize was that I was guiding every step she took. Inside, the betrayal burned like fire. Every time she looked at me with that smug little grin, every time she hinted that Garrett wasn't as loyal as I believed, I wanted to scream. But I didn't let it show. I kept my face calm, my voice gentle, and my smile steady. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. The smile was my weapon. I noticed how it unsettled her. She couldn't figure it out. Sometimes she would pause mid-sentence, studying me like she was trying to read my mind. Did I know? Did I suspect? Or was I really as clueless as she hoped? My smile gave her no answers, and that uncertainty began to eat at her. I saw it in her fidgeting, in the way she shifted her weight when I looked her directly in the eye. She wanted to feel powerful, but instead, my calmness made her nervous. She expected anger, maybe even tears. She got none of that. She only got me smiling, carrying on as if everything was perfectly fine. The act became easier the longer I played it. The more I pretended to lean on her, the more comfortable she became, and the more mistakes she made. She started dropping bigger hints, letting her pride show. She wanted me to doubt myself, to crumble under her words. But instead, I tucked every little jab into my memory, storing it for the moment I would finally turn it all back on her. It was the calm before the storm, and she didn't even realize the storm was already on its way. She thought she had me where she wanted me, but the truth was, I was the one leading her into the trap, step by careful step. I knew the time had come to stop waiting. I had watched, I had listened, and I had gathered more than enough to prove what was happening. All I needed now was the right stage, and there was no better stage than our family table. So I arranged a dinner inviting my parents, Garrett, and of course Savannah. I made it sound like a simple get-together, a chance for us to sit down and enjoy a meal as a family. That evening, the air felt thick the moment we sat down. My parents were cheerful, chatting about work and asking about wedding plans. Savannah acted sweet, smiling at everyone as if butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. Garrett looked tired, distracted, though he tried to play along. I stayed calm, my smile steady, though my heart beat hard beneath the surface. The food was served, and for a while, I let the conversation flow naturally. My father asked Garrett about his job. My mother asked Savannah about her plans, and everything seemed normal. But I was just waiting, biding my time. Then, in the middle of the meal, I set down my fork and spoke lightly, as though I were asking something ordinary. "Garrett," I said, tilting my head with a small smile, "those late-night calls you've been having lately, are they work-related? Or should I be asking Savannah about them?" The silence that followed was sharp. Both Garrett and Savannah froze. Garrett's face went pale, and Savannah's smile slipped off her lips. My parents looked between them, confused. I didn't rush. I let the silence sit there, heavy and undeniable. Finally, Garrett stammered something about me misunderstanding, while Savannah tried to laugh it off, saying I must be imagining things. That was the moment I reached into my bag. Calmly, I placed my phone on the table and pressed play. The sound of their voices filled the room. Recordings I had kept of their conversations, the laughter that wasn't meant for me, the words that crossed lines no sister and fiancé should ever cross. Their eyes widened. My parents' faces turned to stone. My mother covered her mouth in shock, and my father leaned back, speechless. Garrett's hands trembled against his glass, and Savannah's cheeks burned red. I didn't need to raise my voice or accuse them with anger. The evidence spoke for me. I pulled out a few printed messages too, laying them neatly on the table like cards in a game. Every piece was there, undeniable and sharp. The truth spilled out without me having to force it. My parents didn't ask me if it was real. They could see it with their own eyes, hear it with their own ears. I stayed composed, my tone soft as I looked at both of them. "I knew from the night I overheard you," I said quietly. "I've just been waiting for this moment." No one touched their food after that. The dinner I had planned wasn't about eating. It was about ending the lies in front of the very people who mattered most. And in that moment, the trap closed, and there was no way out for them. The room was filled with tension after the evidence was laid out. Savannah jumped in quickly, her voice uneven but loud enough to cover her fear. "You're all wrong about this," she said, looking around the table. "Garrett was the one who came after me. I told him to stop, but he wouldn't listen. Lacey has it all twisted. She's just imagining things." She tried to make herself look innocent, shifting blame, throwing out words fast like they could hide the truth. But her face betrayed her, and the cracks showed. My parents watched her closely, their expressions darkening with every excuse she made. My mother pressed her lips together, while my father's eyes grew colder. Garrett sat stiff, silent for a while, but his guilt weighed too heavily. He finally spoke, his voice breaking. "I did wrong," he admitted, not looking at anyone. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way. Lacey, please. I don't want to lose you. I still love you. It was a mistake." The words fell flat. He reached out as if to take my hand, but I pulled it back before he touched me. He looked smaller then, cornered and full of shame. Savannah's mask slipped further. When she realized no one was siding with her, her tone turned sharp. "You all act like she's perfect," she hissed. "She's not. She just hides it better than the rest of us." The bitterness in her voice was louder than her defense, and it told my parents everything they needed to know. They didn't shout at her, didn't scold her in that moment. Their silence said enough. Disappointment hung in the air, heavier than anger. Savannah's eyes darted from face to face, but she found no sympathy anywhere at the table. I stayed quiet until the right moment. Then I leaned back, calm, the same steady smile on my lips that had carried me this far. My voice was soft, but it cut through the silence. I knew from the night I overheard you." The color drained from Savannah's cheeks, and Garrett lowered his head as if the words themselves pushed him down. There was no more running from it. Everything they had tried to hide was now laid bare, and the damage was done. The next morning, I knew exactly what I had to do. There was no point in dragging things out, no point in giving Garrett or Savannah another chance to explain themselves. Words were cheap now, and their actions had already spoken louder than anything they could say. I wasn't going to argue, and I wasn't going to cry. I would end it the way I had lived through it, calmly, with a steady hand. I called Garrett first. My tone was even, not angry, not sad, just final. "The engagement is over," I told him. "You don't need to come by. I'll send your things back." He tried to protest, stumbling over promises that meant nothing, but I didn't let him drag me into another one of his pleas. I simply said goodbye and hung up. It was the last time I spoke to him as my fiancé. But ending it privately wasn't enough. He had lied in secret, so I decided the truth would be shared in the open. At first, I reached out to the friends we both knew, the ones who had congratulated us on our engagement. I told them plainly that it was called off, and when they asked why, I told them the truth. "He betrayed me," I said simply. "And it wasn't with a stranger. It was with my sister." I didn't need to give every detail. The shock in their voices told me enough. Word spread quickly after that, moving from friends to coworkers to family friends. Garrett's image of being loyal and dependable cracked in front of everyone. Invitations stopped coming his way. Mutual friends kept their distance. When people looked at him now, they didn't see a man about to be married. They saw a man who had destroyed his own future with his own choices. That was a punishment harsher than anything I could have shouted at him. Savannah's fall was even harder. Our parents made their feelings clear right away. The money they had sometimes helped her with? Gone. The support she had always expected from them? Cut off. And the trust she had hoped to steal from me? Completely shattered. She tried to spin her story again, but no one believed her anymore. To them, she wasn't the younger daughter who just made mistakes. She was the one who had betrayed her own sister in the worst possible way. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. When people asked me about it, I spoke with calmness. "It happened," I said, nothing more. My silence weighed heavier than anger ever could. My smile unsettled them both more than tears would have. They expected me to fall apart, but instead I walked forward untouchable. Revenge didn't come from shouting or fighting. It came from letting the truth live in the open, where they couldn't hide from it. And I gave them no closure, no comfort, just the quiet certainty that they had destroyed themselves. Weeks passed after the storm, and the house felt different. There was no more pretending, no more walking on thin lines. Garrett had faded from my life completely, and Savannah had been left to deal with the weight of her own choices. I focused on myself again, my work, my peace, my future. Each day felt lighter, even though the wound of betrayal was still there. It was healing slowly in its own way. One afternoon, Savannah showed up. She looked tired, her confidence gone. She stood at my door with tears in her eyes, trying to soften her voice the way she always did when she wanted something. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. I made a mistake." I listened, but I didn't move to comfort her. She had taken too much already, and I wasn't going to let her take my forgiveness too. When she finally paused, I spoke clearly, my tone calm. "I gave you everything once. You took it. You don't get another chance." The look on her face told me she understood. There was no anger left in me, just a wall she couldn't cross anymore. She left without another word, and I closed the door, feeling no regret. Life went on, and I built myself stronger than before. The weight of their betrayal no longer crushed me. It pushed me higher. People still asked about what happened, but I didn't let it define me. I wasn't the woman who was left behind. I was the woman who survived it, untouchable. Late one night, I sat alone, thinking back to how it all began. The memory was still sharp, that moment when I stood outside the kitchen door and heard her whispering into the phone. I remembered the cold shock in my chest, the way my hand trembled on the doorframe, and then the smile that formed on my lips as I pulled the door closed. That smile had carried me through every step, every trap, every reveal. And as I thought about it now, I understood the truth. That night wasn't just the start of their betrayal. It was the start of my victory. That night, when I overheard her, I closed the door with a smile. I whispered to myself. And that smile was the beginning of their end. Do you think Lacey did the right thing by cutting off her sister and ex-fiancé? Or should she have forgiven them? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.